Coming up on Tech News Today, is AT&T buying Dish? Who's got access to Megaupload's data? Who is BSR's anonymous Apple source? Is RIM doomed in Europe? Is the next cell phone privacy bill even a good one? All those questions and many more next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Monday, January 30th, 2012. Tech News Today is brought to you by GoToMeeting. Collaborate face-to-face remotely with GoToMeeting with HD Faces. For your free 30-day trial, visit GoToMeeting.com, promo code TNT. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Iyaz Akhtar.
I'm Nicole Lee.
And I'm Jason Howell.
This is the show where we kick around the tech news of the day and try to make some sense of it all without Tom. This week, Tom Merritt is on vacation, a much-deserved vacation. So, Nicole, thank you so much for being a part of the show today.
Not a problem.
Good. All right, well, let's get right into a story that wasn't exactly breaking right before the show, but we decided to put it right up at the top because it's sort of rumory, but it has some clout. Okay, so there have been stories around the web of the idea of AT&T possibly acquiring Dish Network. Well, according to a note from Credit Suisse Group AG, AT&T put in a request with the FCC for a spectrum waiver that signals the phone company is eager to buy airwaves from Dish, the satellite TV provider. AT&T says they want no restrictions on the transfer and or leasing of the spectrum. That's Dish's spectrum. That's what AT&T wrote in comments to the FCC on January 26th. Mm-hmm. AT&T also said the agency should require a fast-track network build-out, which is a stipulation that could make it difficult for Dish to keep spectrum, said a Credit Suisse analyst. Jonathan Chaplin, another analyst at Credit Suisse, said in an email, previously AT&T was pushing for a more extensive review of the waiver request. Now they seem to be supportive of an expedited review. And I would think, on the surface, that's because if they're interested, they want Dish to be able to do what it wants with its spectrum if they were in a position to be in charge of Dish.
Yeah, so this was a note that was I think on Friday. It didn't look really interesting until people went, wait a second, what does this actually mean? If Dish can build out its network, they wanted to build out their own LTE network, and they have to fast track it in a certain way that could make them kind of, willing to sell to AT&T, because AT&T they tried to buy T-Mobile for almost $40 billion. Mm-hmm. Dish is way cheaper, like a couple of $1 billion. So this note, which I'm telling you, just kind of snuck in. So I'm still trying to wrap my head around exactly what it means. But it's obviously makes the most sense considering how far back AT&T is or how spectrum poor they've become, because Verizon's just lighting it up in the entire United States. So AT&T needs to move.
Yeah, AT&T right now is playing catch-up with Verizon Wireless, as you say, and they need spectrum. The part of the reasoning for buying T-Mobile was all this extra spectrum they would get from the T-Mobile buyout. Since that fell through in this spectacularly, they just need something from Dish. And it would, they kind of poo-pooed it when Dish initially offered up their spectrum, but now they're like, sounds like a good idea.
Well, then they just transferred, or they're trying to transfer $1 billion worth of spectrum to T-Mobile as a part of the failed merger. So now they're losing out even further.
They're losing even more spectrum than they thought they would, yeah.
And to get a build out for the LTE network, which AT&T is slowly rolling out, because their 4G was a mix of the other standard HSPA+, which T-Mobile calls.
The word 4G has lost all meaning at this point. But yeah, they're trying to gain traction with Verizon, essentially. So...
Well, again, this is something we put into the show. We will give you an update as we have it as well. But that is the news for now. Definitely thought that it was worth letting you guys know about off of the top of the show. On to a story that we talked about extensively last week, but there's more, and that's Megaupload. AP is reporting that federal prosecutors say that data from users of Megaupload could be deleted as soon as Thursday. That doesn't mean data of illegal, copied, anything. That just means data. So that's legitimate users who have been using Megaupload to store and transfer any legitimate files as well. A letter filed in the case Friday by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Virginia said storage companies Carpathia Hosting, Inc. and Cogent Communications Group, Inc. may begin deleting data as early as this Thursday. The letter also said the government copied data from the servers, didn't physically take them, and that said now that it has executed its search warrants, it really has no right to the data. They're done, pretty much. And the idea at this point is if you need any of the data, it's probably best if you contact one of the storage companies like Carpathia and figure out how to get that from them. And a statement, Carpathia is like, no, please, that's not exactly how it went at all. Carpathia says, hey, we don't have access. We've never had access to the content on Megaupload servers. That's not what we do. We're hosting. We're not accessing. We don't have a mechanism for returning any content residing on such servers to Megaupload's customers. Carpathia also said the government's filing isn't even related to any information provided by Carpathia. Quote, we would recommend that anybody who believes that they have content on Megaupload servers to contact Megaupload. And I'm laughing because how are you going to do that? Everybody's in jail and the site's shut down. But the message is don't call us. Call somebody, but don't call us because we can't access that data. That's not what we do. Cogent Communications hasn't responded to a request for comment. One would think it's probably going to be a similar story. Obviously, these server hosts would never want to be tasked with the job of, let's say, I come to them and say, there's a home video. It's completely legal. It's my own property. It's on Megaupload servers. Means a lot to me. I need to find it. You have to help me. Obviously, they don't want that job. But I don't think they even have the opportunity to take on that job.
They're just a host. I mean, effectively, if people are asking these hosts for the content, you're asking the host to administer the site, which is not something that they do normally, unless I guess it was their own site. But this is Megaupload stuff. And I mean, as for the statements, it looks like why these hosting companies would be allowed to delete the files is because Megaupload hasn't paid them for a long time. It's that statement from Megaupload's attorney saying that Megaupload can't keep paying its hosting providers because of frozen assets. So that makes a lot of sense. And then if the government says, yeah, you can delete it as of this day, we don't need it. If they haven't been paid, there's really no reason for them to keep hanging on to these files. It's just the way hosting works. If you're not paying your host, they don't host your stuff anymore. But that doesn't mean that they will delete it or not.
Well, Rothkin also said he was working with prosecutors to keep 50 million Megaupload users' data from being erased, obviously with the intent that there is a lot of legitimate content there. That could also be sort of a way to help a case that, we don't want a lot of this stuff to be deleted because this is legitimate content. People weren't just trading, illegally obtained movies, for example. But I just don't know what is the incentive for a company like Carpathia or Cogent to get rid of everything by Thursday, to wash their hands of it, to not be forced to somehow go through it line by line if in fact they have that capability.
Well, I mean, I'm just thinking it's just the bill, flat out. I mean, there's going to be traffic. They're trying to resolve Megaupload, and you're trying to go to the site. It's not there. People are going to wonder, okay, what's going on? Contact the host. What's going on? Look, we're not the host of this thing anymore. You got to leave us alone. At some point, I think people would
but you would think they would have backups, right? Just in case.
Yeah, but that stuff's all offline right now, right?
That's true.
So it's. I think that if Megaupload's attorneys are working with the prosecutors, I'm kind of curious which copies they want to save.
Yeah.
Is it the ones that have been copied to the government servers or the government's computers, and not necessarily the servers they had originally? I'm just kind of... I don't know
then you've got the government saying, we have been selectively copying some stuff that we need for our case over. We didn't take any physical servers, so you do whatever you want with those, and we're done. And then you have the company that they took the information from saying, we have no idea how to get to that information. So that doesn't really add up either.
I mean, I'm just thinking, look, we have a hosting company that doesn't want to get called. That's pretty much it. And they're saying, leave us alone.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're not going to. We'll keep talking about this story as it further develops. It's Megaupload, and we can't help ourselves. But now on to a story that started actually last week as well. New York Times piece on Apple labor practices and human rights violations and issues associated with making electronics, not just from companies like Apple, but from most electronic manufacturers these days. Aaron Kramer, who is the CEO of BSR, which stands for Business for Social Responsibility, which is a consulting firm, works with Apple, works with a lot of big Fortune 500 companies on corporate responsibility, posted an open letter to the New York Times because the New York Times original article had quoted an anonymous source from within BSR extensively. The rebuttal says, my BSR colleagues and I view Apple as a company that's making a highly serious effort to ensure that labor conditions in its supply chain meet the expectations of applicable laws, the company's standards, and the expectations of consumers and other stakeholders. In other words, I don't know why you're quoting us because we don't feel that way at all. They also say, listen, there's an anonymous BSR consultant that you quoted, but that person isn't affiliated with us. Obviously wasn't named in the story, but BSR seems to think it wasn't anybody that we talked to. Now, I'm not exactly sure how they can say that because when you have an anonymous source, it could be anybody. It could be the CEO himself. I mean, that's what anonymity is that you don't know who they are, and that's why they might be more likely to talk freely about something. But in any case, BSR says, no, it wasn't us. They also said they had a chance to, I guess, look at a version of the New York Times piece before it went to print. They sent back clarifications and said some things were clarified, but not everything. So we're unhappy with the way that we were put forth. They feel misrepresented, I suppose. I'm not sure that they can say that they know that there's not an anonymous source that could be talking to the New York Times.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to think back to this New York Times documentary I saw, and basically when stories are written about people, they call up the reporters and they start basically yelling at them, asking, who is your source? Who is your source?
Yeah.
And there's no reason that they have to turn over the information. However, I would imagine there's a good chance BSR called up the New York Times, asked, who is your source? Because if this is what's going on, we need a name, at least. And if it was turned over, they'd be like, well, nobody like that works here. Maybe it was a fake name in the first place, so there was nothing to go on. But or the New York Times didn't turn over that information in the first place. So it's very hard to say what was going on to the point that BSR could say, that wasn't one of our guys.
Right. It should also be clear that they're not refuting everything in the article either. So, I mean, there are still questions. The hardest thing to brush away, according to this article, are the harsh quotes in the piece from unnamed former Apple executives, which claim that Apple has the ability to improve worker conditions, but simply isn't doing what you think. And that has nothing to do with what BSR said.
True, and that was part of the reason Tim Cook was so upset. Like I guess it was last Friday, because it's sort of the same thing. Right. Someone who's in charge of a company saying, "That's not my quote. Who's saying this? It's not us." Right. And Tim Cook saying, okay, "Who are these people? This is not what we're about." Right. We're personally offended by the things that are said. It's a bigger story, really, that we come across constantly on the show, is that we do our best to always make it very clear when something's an anonymous source, so you can't take it at face value. Right. But this is the way a lot of information is shared. Some of it ends up being true, some of it doesn't. It's interesting to see a company call out New York Times saying, "I don't know who your anonymous person is, but it's not us." Right. All right, moving on. Actually, let's take a quick break because we want to thank GoToMeeting before we go on to some of the most interesting stories on the show. If you've ever had a face-to-face meeting, you know. In fact, on the show, we're always talking about how it's so nice to do the show in person. It's nice to have Nicole sitting here rather than on Skype because nothing really replaces those social cues, the body language. I roll my eyes at Iyaz, that sort of thing that you get from being in an actual meeting with people. But hey, let's face it, people are busy. People work remotely these days. Travel is very expensive. You just can't be in the same room as your colleagues or even your friends all the time. So if that sounds like something that's a challenge for you, GoToMeeting with HD Faces might be your perfect solution. Here's how it works. GoToMeeting by Citrus takes a webcam and just a click to join a collaboration in a group. So all of us with our built-in webcams on our computer or external one, whatever you've got, and then you log into the same GoToMeeting meeting, and all of a sudden you are talking, you are chatting, not only your faces, but you can work on documents in real time, you can mock up stuff, and with HD video everything looks really good, everything's clean and clear, and you know, when you have to be remote with people, you want it to look as professional as possible, especially when you're meeting people for the first time and that sort of thing. So it's like you're all in one room, and when you're done you go back to work, and it's actually easier than if you had to get everybody together physically by far. So if you want to start hosting your own face-to-face online meetings today with GoToMeeting, you want to know how to get started, we have a special deal for you. Visit GoToMeeting.com, click the Try It Free button, use the promo code TNT, and you get to try it free for 30 days. So that is GoToMeeting.com, promo code TNT for 30 days free of remote meetings. And we thank them for supporting this episode of Tech News Today. Moving on to Samsung and the Galaxy Note. The date has been released.
AT&T released official information about the Samsung Galaxy Note. It's going to be $300 with a 2-year contract, and it's going to be available on the 19th. Now, if you forgot about the Note, I'm not really sure that's even possible. It's a 5.3-inch touchscreen device with a 1280 by 800 display, 1.5 gigahertz dual-core processor, 8-megapixel camera, and then a 2-megapixel front-facing and a gig of RAM. And it will be an LTE device, and the pre-orders are set to begin this weekend with the February 17th delivery. And you get a choice of colors, of blue or white. Also information for Canadians, the Note's coming to Rogers, Bell, and TELUS on February 14th. So for Valentine's Day, get yourself a Note. $250 with a 3-year contract, so a little longer there. Well, people have been very excited about the Note because it's this very strange form factor. A 5.3-inch device instead of... We've seen phones get larger and larger, 4.3, 4.7. We've seen tablets get smaller and smaller. Mm-hmm. This is that very odd thing. It's got a weird price point at $300, and it has a weird form factor. So no one really knows how this is going to do.
Yeah, I think the question a lot of people have is, can it replace my tablet? Well, it totally depends on what you're doing. For me, too small to be a tablet. Or can it replace my phone? Now, if you're a person that talks a lot on your phone, this seems too big to me. Then again, I don't talk on my phone that much. So if you're actually holding something in your hand on a regular basis, I think it's just a matter of transport. It's not going to fit in any of my pockets, but then again, neither does my iPhone really. So it's that awkward size that I think will appeal to certain people, but do you need it in addition to a phone and a tablet? No. So what does it replace, if either?
It's a half tablet, half smartphone. So maybe it replaces...
A Phoneblet. Oh, that rolls right off the tongue.
Oh, no. So maybe it yeah, I know it's one of those things that you don't really know which niche it fills, but I think there's a market for it for those who, like, there's this trend now in smartphones where, again, the display gets bigger and bigger. And I think there is a desire for large screens on phones. So I think that fills that niche. I don't know if this is a tablet replacement. I really don't think it is, just because tablets to me speak of a different kind of usage. Like, you use it differently for like larger scale things, like a big Netflix experience, which actually might look really good on a Note, or
reading, for example. I mean, a tablet is not too far off from what a physical book looks like when you're reading a page of a book.
Like a small little paperback. You could sort of see it that way. So I can kind of see it, depending on what your usage is. For example, at CES, they had all these like caricature artists at the Samsung booth sort of drawing caricatures on the Note as a display of how you can use it as a creative device. So that could be one use case for the Note.
See, what I found with the 7-inch tablets is that the web browsing experience is not that different from a phone experience. That you're still pinching and zooming, you're still doing that. Mm-hmm. So at 7 inches, it's a little large to carry around. So you have this Kindle Fire or a Playbook or something, and that's okay for media consumption. But if you're going to bother with a smaller device and you're going to be pinching and zooming, what's the largest size you can get? I think the 5.3 could take on the 7-inch tablet form factor, because that's this kind of, I still think, a very weird space, because it's good for media consumption, but not so great for web browsing. So if you're going to have the not so great experience, why not go with the 5.3 with a pretty good display at 1280 by 800? I mean, you're getting pretty much the same resolution.
Well, and if let's say you're really into app games, the 5.3 is more portable, looks nice, it's going to fit more places, but it's still a better gaming experience because you just got more screen real estate than, a 4-inch.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good point compared to like something like a DS or a PSP Vita. I mean, this is effectively smaller and thinner. I don't think it's going to really light up the market.
You don't think it's going to be a
Yeah.
hit?
I agree. I think this is definitely a niche product.
niche
and it might, and it'll find its supporters. Actually, Tony Wang, editor here at TWiT, has a note, and he loves it. He definitely swears by it. But yeah, it's too dead center in between those two things. It's straddling these two lines that I think the average everyday consumer isn't going to understand why they should go that way when they're used to a phone on one side and a tablet on the other. But it's nifty. Samsung's playing around a lot with all sorts of sizes and form factors on these things. This is kind of part of that. So I'm sure people are going to vote with their money, and Samsung at some point is going to have to do what like Motorola and HTC has done, which is kind of strip it back a little bit, and we'll see if this gets
Samsung's, Samsung is proud of its Galaxy Note numbers overseas. Asia and Europe last year, Samsung says they shipped 1 million Galaxy Notes within those 2 months. That's not sold. That is shipped. However, sources did tell All Things D that the Note sold out, meaning sold out by people buying it in Hong Kong in its first month there. Samsung has gotten in a little trouble before saying sold numbers when it meant shipped numbers and has had to retract a bit. But the numbers look relatively healthy. I think it depends on the market. North American market will... Just not sure.
Yeah, I do find one thing that's, somewhat related here is the $300 price point subsidized. You're seeing this more. You see it a lot on Verizon now. Pretty much their high-end,
pretty much every
high-end
phones.
Their high-end phones are $300 now, and they also happen to be LTE. Now AT&T is kind of dipping its toes into those waters. People, see the $300 tag, and they're like, "No way am I going to pay that for one of these phones." But I really have a feeling like this is working for Verizon. I think, and you're probably going to see that a lot more for phones like this.
Moving on to phones people aren't buying. Can you guess which company I'm talking about?
Oh, that was mean.
You know what? That was mean. I'm sorry,
mean.
Rim. I didn't mean it. It's a manic Monday. It just came out. Forrester Research has found that Rim, Apple, and Android phones now equally share the workplace market. Okay, well, they're equally sharing, but, Rim used to completely dominate enterprise. 27% of smartphone users say that they had an Android phone, 26% a BlackBerry, 24% an iPhone. Frank Gillette, a Forrester analyst, says Android and Apple together are eating BlackBerry's lunch. So he thinks that's things aren't looking good for
Their
Rim.
lunch out unlabeled. Rim. Think about that.
Now, IDC recently surveyed business managers, information tech managers at 728 businesses across 7 Western European countries and found that Android was the fastest growing mobile operating system for business customers in 2011. Okay. However, citing figures from research firm GfK, Moco News says that BlackBerry has managed to hold on to its title as the best-selling smartphone brand in the British market for the second year. Not exactly sure how or why the British market would differ from the overall trend of the rest of Western Europe going more Android, but there it is. So it sounds like iPhone has seen quite a bit of enterprise growth in North America, but Android is making the gains in Europe. RIM CEO, the new one, Thorsten Hein, says, listen, BlackBerry 10 is supposed to address stuff like this. We're aware that there's what they call a consumerization of IT. That means businesses letting people choose the kind of phone operating systems they want rather than saying, you work here, you get a BlackBerry, that's the way it goes. Right. He also says, so he's like, we know, people want to do that, that's cool. BlackBerry 10 is going to be all over that. But when the first big security flaw even happens in one of these large enterprises, you will see this turn around. Wait for the day this happens.
Wait until your phone dies and you come crawling back to us.
Yeah, it's BlackBerry. It's as if Mr. Hines is saying, okay, you want to let your enterprise consumers choose their own phone? Yeah, well, that's stupid because eventually you're going to have a terrible security breach and you'll be back.
You'll be sorry.
It just sounds
everybody.
Sounds like, you might get hurt if you don't pay some money. It just seems like the first time one of those services go down, okay, people are going to look at RIM and go, what did you just do? Did you do this? Did you cause this outage? Because you can't. This almost sounds like a threat. Wait for the day this happens. It's like that's a bit harsh. But it's true though. BlackBerry is really secure. That's one of the reasons why it was really popular. Because when you're sending out corporate communications or any sensitive data, you want to make sure that it's not intercepted at all. Now, Android and iOS have made a lot of strides in the security thing, but BlackBerry is secure. That's their big hook right now, and they're trying so hard, I think. And
but part of the problem with security, as we've discovered in the past years, that when their server goes down, everybody's affected because it's tied into that one particular ecosystem. It doesn't have the flexibility of going onto another ecosystem. And so, there are problems with being too secure, being in too close of a system as well. And, that's kind of like why people are going to Android and iPhones. Because
I think RIM's biggest problem is that people say, we don't want to wait for the day this happens because that's going to be at the end of 2012. So we're going to go do something else right now. RIM, you're late to the party. And that concludes our RIM bashing for the day. Moving on to some cell phone privacy, or something that's supposed to make cell phone privacy better. Representative Edward Markey from Massachusetts has released a draft of a cell phone privacy bill called the Mobile Device Privacy Act. It would require companies to do a few important things. Disclose if they are using tracking software like Carrier IQ and what information that the software is collecting. Consumers would have to opt in to any data collection or transmission, and then third parties would have to have policies in place to make sure that the data that they're collecting is secure. Companies that want to transfer data to third parties would have to first file applications with the FTC and the FCC. On the surface, is anybody arguing that this is a bad idea? It seems like a good idea to me, right?
In theory, it's a good idea. But don't we already have systems in place to have privacy?
I think the main problem, and Iyaz, you brought this up before the show, is that if a company is using a tracking program like Carrier IQ, when people found out about this late last year, there was a lot of fear and
what? I didn't know my phone was doing this.
And surprise, and I can't believe it. Right. Well, if they disclose it in terms of servers that people aren't reading, is anything changing all that much? Because they can say, you should have read it. We said we were going to.
When the whole Carrier IQ went down, Carrier IQ situation, I read like Sprint's terms of service, and they kind of told you they were doing this. It's just in there. And on their webpage, it's actually the font's actually kind of large. So the thing is, if this becomes an actual law, the Mobile Device Privacy Act, theoretically, you'd have some kind of new expressed warning, and you'd have consent each time. I don't know if that means like pop-up windows. I don't know if that means that there's a sticker on your phone that says you can't use this unless you know what's going on, or something like that. But we've seen so often, and I've said this so many times that I should just have it recorded at this point. Okay, how many times do we see EULAs pop up before you install iTunes? Or how many things are shrink-wrapped in the old days? And by removing the shrink wrap and hitting a sticker, you were agreeing to the EULA. How often do people even bother to read this? Because all these disclosure stuff, like this happens with car rentals. You see that disclosure form. It's one pink piece of paper with tiny text that goes on forever, it seems like, on both sides, that I don't think I've ever seen anybody read. At least I've done it. I've sat there and read the thing while getting it, and they're like, what are you doing? Like,
they just want you to initial and get the heck out.
I want to know what I'm agreeing to.
Most people want to get out, too.
Like, what am I agreeing to? But that was because of law school training. They go, look, you are bound by a different standard because normal people don't read anything. It's a very odd standard. But I would hope that this kind of thing would, I mean, theoretically, it's a good idea. You want people to know what's going on. You want to see, I didn't realize my phone was doing this. But if there's enough disclosure, it just becomes like this wall of noise that people don't look at.
It does seem like if there was a way to have to consent to data collection, it's all sort of in the wording that was not hidden in it. Do you accept? Yes. I just want to download this something. Then that would be better for consumers. And also, I guess this helps consumers more protected from companies, because if they don't file applications with the FTC, for example, before they gave data to a third party, then they'd be liable for some sort of lawsuit from people who at least are paying attention enough. So there is some accountability, I think, that's at least being offered up legally.
Yeah, I mean, if they were already engaging in deceptive practices, there's a way to cover that too. I mean, that's already a pre-existing law. I mean, we talked about this with SOPA. If there's actually a pre-existing law that takes care of this, you might not need another one. I mean, this is just like a belt and suspenders kind of deal. It seems like I've seen Edward Markey's name pop up every time there's a privacy concern with Google or Facebook or Carrier IQ. He's very big into that, and that's to be applauded. But sometimes you want to make sure that you aren't, like, you're not putting out an unnecessary piece of legislation. Just so cautious. I'm just being cautious. I think it's a good idea.
I think you're right.
It's commendable.
Markey, we'll be following you closely. On to the news fuse. Google Facebook, Microsoft, Yahoo, and 11 other companies have formed a new anti-phishing alliance to keep phishers, email phishers, from fooling email and web users into providing sensitive information like credit card numbers. The alliance is known as, this is a good one, Domain-Based Message Authentication Reporting and Conformance, or DMARC.
Rolls right off the tongue.
Yeah, it does. DMARC is okay.
DMARC's good.
And it's based on new email standards that's supposed to keep emails from ever reaching spam folders, because the problem is that people check their spam folders to make sure that they didn't miss anything interesting, and then they click this email from PayPal, and then all of a sudden they got phished.
Motorola announced the Droid Razr Developer Edition, which will have an unlocked bootloader. It's first coming to Europe, and it's available for pre-order today at a cost of €500. A version will be available in the U.S. in the coming months. According to PC Mag, the device is essentially identical to the current GSM model of the Droid Razr. So if you actually wanted to tinker with the Razr, which is pretty locked down in the United States, Moto's actually made it easier.
You're going to like this story. According to the Daily Mail, 2 British tourists were stopped from entering the U.S. due to tweets. Ooh, so they probably said some really bad stuff, right? Okay, here's the first one. Free this week for quick gossip prep before I go and destroy America. And 3 weeks today, we're in L.A., being off people on Hollywood Boulevard and digging Marilyn Monroe up. The Department of Homeland Security did not find that funny and held the 2 at LAX on suspicion of planning crimes. Destroy could be British slang for party, but the 2 were held for 12 hours before being sent back. They didn't get in.
Yahoo's cleaning house by killing off 10 of its mobile apps, including Yahoo Answers for Android, Yahoo Finance for BlackBerry, and Yahoo Sketches Search for iOS. I never heard of that one. The cuts are a part of what Yahoo is calling their mobile-first strategy. Newer apps like LiveStand and TV app Into Now are still around, and technologies from those dead apps are expected to be integrated into those living apps. So it's kind of like a organ donor kind of thing going there.
New live. According to CNET sources, Windows 8 for ARM is now stable, and developers will be getting access in February. One source called the ARM version impressive, and another suggested that this development could mean simultaneous releases of both the ARM and Intel versions of Windows 8. As is par for the course, Microsoft not commenting on the story.
The New York Times profiled Barnes & Noble and found out that the company will release a new e-reading device scheduled for spring. The Times said that engineers were currently putting final touches on the reader. And Gadget surmises it'll be an e-ink device, considering Barnes & Noble's current release cycle.
New Nook. Interesting.
Yeah. What do you think?
I don't know. Nook 2.
You gotta do something. In rare good news for LightSquared, the FCC is seeking public comments on the company's request for a finding that its network does not interfere with GPS. Preliminary tests by agencies said LightSquared's network would cause issues with GPS, but LightSquared has said publicly that those tests are rigged. Comments to the FCC must be submitted by February 27th.
Symantec announced that PC Anywhere 12.5 is safe to use again if users downloaded the January 23rd patch. Older versions of the software, particularly 12.0 and 12.1, need to download a patch that was released on the 27th. The company is also offering free upgrades to the PC Anywhere 12.5 version to all customers.
Twitter's partnered up with Chilling Effects to post 4,400 DMCA cease and desist notices that Twitter has received since November 2010 and counting at chillingeffects.org/Twitter. The usual suspects like movie studios, music labels are the ones making up the bulk of the notices, which usually refers to a tweet that contains a link to infringing material, and then Twitter takes it down, and then you see, sorry, that page doesn't exist. If you're looking for specifics, the Chilling Effects database is searchable. And now, onto the randomizer.
Randomizer.
Have you ever wondered what Apple employees do their first few months on the job?
I'll say yes, so the story keeps going.
I'm glad you wondered that, Iyaz. I'm about to tell you that, at least according to a forthcoming book by Adam Lashinsky called Inside Apple, How America's Most Admired and Secretive Company Really Works, Apple puts new employees to work on fake dummy projects in order to see if they can be trusted. Obviously, Apple is a very secretive, if not the most secretive company.
Right.
And they want to make sure that if some sort of blogger gets word of a new iPhone WMP3, they'll say, it was John.
It was that
You're
guy.
fired. We can't trust you because you're a leak.
You.
I mean, we've seen some weird rumors out there. I remember there was this one thing. Remember Asteroid? It was this FireWire audio device from Apple. It was supposed to like change everything about music. You're supposed to be able to attach it to your
When
Mac.
was this?
This is like Power PC days. This is a long time ago. And
But that was not real. That was like
it was talked about for a long time.
story.
Never ever came out. So I'm thinking, yeah, maybe
was a bait.
There's probably some guy out there who was like, I'm working on this great thing. It's going to be amazing. It's fantastic. And then like just think about that awkward meeting where they're like, yeah, you know that thing you've been working for like 8 months? It's not real. Sorry. So
Sorry.
And
We
you're
just-
the only one that's
we
been
just
working on
put
it.
that there.
So,
but here's your new key card.
I need to trust
You can
you.
move on, or give me your key card. You're fired.
It's like at the end of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. He wins because he didn't give up the. Anyway, it's different than this. But you think this seems a little ridiculous to me. It's like it's time consuming. It's expensive. It's a little silly. But then again, this is Apple. They care about secrecy to the point where I could believe this story.
I wonder if the guy who was making the hi-fi thought, oh, this can't be real. This one can't be real. This little.
I'm going to phone it in on this one.
We're gonna-
'cause it can't be real.
This can't be real.
I can't really be putting
I'm
this
just gonna
out.
phone it in
I
for
heard
this
that we
one.
did fake products. This must be one of those.
Well, also, now that employees know that Apple does this, they're going to get a bunch of people, second week on the job being like, what do I say? I know this isn't real. I read that book.
Did I work hard? I don't know.
Mr. Cook, please put me on a real project.
Put me on the iPhone team.
Oh,
Something
Apple.
else. Something.
I promise I won't go to a bar with it.
I won't go to a bar at all. Just want a real project. Onto the calendar.
Microsoft has started its technical preview for its Office 15 client servers and cloud services today, January 30th. A public beta is expected in late summer. No official word on general availability, date, Windows 8 on ARM, or if Office for iPad is a real thing. Amazon's earnings report isn't until tomorrow, but Stifel Nicholas analyst Jordan Rohan wrote to investors last night saying that he has revised his fourth quarter Kindle Fire sales estimate to 6 million units. Now, Rohan previously estimated 5 million, and as a comparison, the Apple iPad sold 15.43 million units back in quarter four. Calm down, people. This is gonna suck. Google Wave is going read only tomorrow.
No!
I'm sorry for the 8 of you who use it.
Okay, I'm over it.
Firefox 10 launches Tuesday, January 31st with a new feature. The browser automatically disables incompatible add-ons and marks all others as compatible. Mozilla says add-ons that work with Firefox 4 or later will be marked as compatible in Firefox 10. And the most exciting piece of news for last. Nintendo's releasing its Pearl Pink 3DS to the United States on February 10th. I know I'm getting 12. For $170. So if you missed out on the holiday bundle that included Nintendogs plus Cats, which is sold out, you can still get your Pink 3DS February 10th.
All right. Pink, whatever. If that's what you want. No, it's nice. And now it's perfect.
Sorry.
It could be a message.
I know.
What is
Let's
coming?
check what's
I
incoming.
thought you were there. And now we're going backwards. That's strange.
Whoa.
Just go.
Outgoing message.
Yeah, I guess so.
Got a voicemail. Call about the Wii U possibly getting a new name.
Hi, guys. Love the show. This is Jeremy from Fox Lake. I was calling regarding the name change or possible name change on the Wii U, and I thought it would only make sense to call it the Wii 2. Keep up the good work. I'll listen to you every day on my drive-in. Bye.
Well, thank you for listening every day. Wii 2 would make the most sense. I don't know that it's...
That exciting.
If they already went with Wii U, it's like they're trying to go a little, I don't know, unconventional, right?
Well, I mean, the thing
So
is,
Wii 2 is all boring.
but PlayStation 2, 3, 4, so they're going to be lagging behind. That's one of the reasons the Xbox was called Xbox 360. So it was up against the PS3.
Right.
So if you see Wii 2 up against the PS4 eventually and the Xbox, whatever the heck they're going to call
Maybe
it.
if they spelled 2 as in TOO instead of TWO. Because I don't know. I just don't like the idea of Wii 2. I think Wii U is fine. I mean, it's a fine name. It's calling the new tablet, the whole system. It's a whole new system.
But wasn't the Wii
Tablet.
the original code name was what? The Revolution?
Revolution.
Like,
See, that was a better
chuck
name.
the Wii name out
I
and just go
know.
Revolution.
Yeah, you just call the Revolution, not the Wii
Or Wii
2
Revolution, or
Wii.
whatever.
Anyway.
But good try, caller, with Wii 2.
Hey, maybe he's onto something. If Nintendo changed it to Wii 2, you can take full credit. You heard it here first. Got an email from Einol Seiden. Hi, TNT crew. I'd like to add something to your story on Nokia and the growth of Symbian phones in emerging markets. Writing from an emerging market country, I'd like to point out that almost all of Nokia's feature phones are now running Symbian. Couple this with the common practice here of carrying around two phones, a smartphone and a feature phone. The numbers for Symbian aren't going going down soon for markets like Eastern Asia. The reason for this is a feature phone lasts for 4 days with normal use battery, while a smartphone dies within the day. You'd also get a data-only plan for the smartphone and a voice-only plan for the feature phone. That saves you money all around. At less than $30 for a Nokia feature phone here with no contract, it's hard to beat that, even with cheaper Android phones that will only last for the day. Very good point. Sometimes it does all come down to battery life and what your money will get you.
And it's also pointing out a real problem with smartphones these days is that the battery life is just not enough. Just because you have a giant screen, you could maybe cram a giant battery in there too. Because I know the Razer Max just came out and it has tons of battery life. It's supposed to be a really
it's supposed to have like days instead of just day.
Yeah, like you don't have to charge it at night. That's a great idea. But it doesn't last 4 days like a feature phone.
It's probably a Galaxy Note sink or swim. A check mark too. You know, is the battery life awesome or is it not awesome?
You could probably do it with a smartphone, but it would just be like this big.
Because you attach a feature phone to the back with
like
its own
this
battery.
big.
Tape it together.
Well, thank you, Einel, for the emails. Well, we've come to the end of our show. You can email us at technewstoday@twit.tv. Iyaz, is that right?
TNT at
TNT@twit.tv. Well, you know, Tech News Today should forward, but whatever. I don't make the rules.
I wonder if it does, actually.
TNT@twit.tv. You can call us, like our anonymous caller did, at 260-TNT-SHOW. And everybody on our Reddit, thank you so much for contributing stories. If you haven't joined our Reddit subreddit at technewstoday.reddit.com, you should. Vote stories up and down, submit stories. We use them every day, and we thank you so much. Thank you to Nicole Lee for being part of the show today.
No problem. Anytime.
And tomorrow we have Justin Robert Young on the show. It's going to be a wild one. Yeah. Don't miss it. See you tomorrow. Sorry, I didn't give us any dancing time.
That's okay. No, you know.